Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, founder of a revolutionary medical sales training and mentorship program called the Medical Sales Career Builder, and I'm also host of the Medical Sales Podcast. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire world. It doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing and diagnostic lab, you name it, you will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 10% performer within your role, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. And remember, I am a medical sales expert sharing my own opinion about this amazing industry and how it can change your life. All right, so Kat Hurd, how are you today?
I am good, Samuel. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Fantastic to have you. Why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
So my name is Kat Hurd. I am a medical device sales coach. So I coach salespeople, sales leaders, specifically in the medical device space. And I spent 15 years in the space myself. So my career has been Fortune 500 companies, small startups, bringing organizations to the US. I've led big teams, I've led small teams, and I had an incredible career. I was rep of the year. I had multi-million-dollar territories, multiple president's clubs, 6 to be exact.
Yeah.
And I took all of that skill and insight and knowledge to build a business to help other reps do the exact same.
Exactly. Kat, we did our research. What I love about your career is, from what we could see, you didn't really start in biology or anything like that. You started in athletics. Then you became a rep. You murdered it as a rep. Yeah. Then you became a manager. You performed there. Then you went to become an area business director. You literally hit every level of management all the way to second line leadership. And then you finally started your own company. I love that, the fact you have all that experience. But before we get into all the details, what I want to know is, what was going on as an area business director that made you say, you know what, now I think I want to start my own thing and I want to teach people how to do the same?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's silly to say, but it was hitting that milestone. So I wanted helping reps be better reps and helping leaders be better leaders was something I had wanted to do for more than a decade. And it had been on my heart, on my mind, but I also felt like I wanted to hit the appropriate levels to really not just have the street cred, but have the insight, have the abilities, have the strategy and the tactical knowledge to actually be able to help people really scale, really make a difference in their careers. So I hit that VP level. So I was an area vice president at Saluda Medical. And then I spent a year in that role. I learned everything that I could. And honestly, Saluda Medical for me was always going to be a 3-ish year play, a 2 to 3 year play. Okay. Because from a startup standpoint, I looked at it as the opportunity to go from big company where I had so many resources to go to small company and look at what is it like to have to be super scrappy. To not have the support, not have the resources. And it was really that moment of, okay, I've got the VP title. I have the insight and knowledge. I've now helped scale and commercialize an organization. My team was doing really well. And it's funny to say, but I was like staring down the barrel of 40. And so I thought, okay, what do I want this next half of my life to be like? And it just felt like the right time, the right moment, the right conditions.
Okay. So was it more of a, I don't know what I want to do, I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to figure it out? Or was it more of, I know I want a coaching business, I'm going to stop doing this and start it?
It was 100%. I know I want a coaching business. I'm going to stop this and start it. Yeah. My first clinical specialist that I had on my team when I was a territory manager, when I told him that I was leaving med device, his first question was, so are you going to do it? And because he knew I had, from the time when I was a territory manager, I had dreams of creating courses and creating opportunities for better reps. And so, it was always in the master plan.
Wow, that's fascinating. But we got to know how it all happened. Take us to the beginning.
Yeah. So athletic training, I know not everyone's, as familiar with that role. So I was taping ankles. I was rehabbing knee injuries. I was doing all the things for athletic teams, got my master's in it. And then I really just had this moment where I was like, I have all this insight and knowledge. So my background isn't, to your point, like the biology or the like more sciencey sciences. I was the physical sciences in human physiology, anatomy. I knew so much about the human body. And I had a girlfriend who was also an athletic trainer who went into med device. And she connected me with the person that helped her get in, right? It's always the connections that you have. And I've had a few other conversations even earlier on in my undergrad career, just trying to figure out, because truth be told, I wanted to leverage the skills that I had.
Right.
I knew I was good with people.
Right.
And I also wanted to have an opportunity to have, some financial runway. And as an athletic trainer, I was unfortunately going to be making like $30,000 to $40,000 a year, working my tail off. And so I thought there's got to be a better way. This individual's name is Hap Peterson. So he was the area director at Boston Scientific at the time.
Okay.
And he happened to live in Iowa, where I was for my graduate school and my undergrad. But so met Hap, sat down with him. And I always tell this story because it's really funny. He brought one of his regional managers. And this is, how different it was to crack into med device.
Right.
And obviously that's your arena.
Yeah.
It was so different then than it is now. There weren't the support and resources. It really was just like, you had to get real scrappy. And I sat down with them and they were at Boston Scientific. And so I tried to do my research. But let me tell you, I learned very quickly I didn't do good enough research because they started drawing anodes and cathodes on the tablecloth. It was one of those Italian restaurants, like paper, they pulling out the crayons and pens, talking about crazy things. They're like, reps are making big money. You can make $700,000. And I'm like, listen, I just want an opportunity to do something with my insight and knowledge and help people at the same time. And so long story long, they had a few opportunities. I told them I'll go anywhere and I will go in any division. Doesn't have to be your division. I will do Arizona sight unseen in 2010. I'm still here in Arizona. I love it. I'm very grateful, but I was ready to go to like the middle of nowhere, Kansas if I needed to break in.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what did your company focus on? Who's your target audience?
Yeah. So I essentially support people from the start of their med device journey. So once you're in, then all the way up to that VP level. Okay. And the real focus, actually, I support past that, but where my real focus is, I was like, I've got a chief growth officer and a few other C-suite clients that I work with as well. So the way I do that is a variety of different programs that I run for my early to med device folks. That's a 3-day workshop called the Successful Sales Rep, and then a program called the Path to President's Club that essentially is your blueprint for how do you build a territory that performs, right? And then I have programs for high-performing sales reps. I do one-on-one coaching with them as well. And then, of course, sales leaders. So the goal of it being that I have not just the experience, of course, that I've done all of the roles before, but programs and offerings that can support you at any point. Because the thing that, and Samuel, I know you get this, right? Because you are working with helping folks get into device on a daily basis. And you know the power of the right support at the right time.
Right.
And it truly is having someone, not just that has done it before, but that has coached people to do it before. And I think that was what was so beautiful about my transition into coaching. I get asked all the time, like, why did you leave such a successful career? I was on a podcast with a physician a few weeks ago, and he's like, you were on your path to be a CEO. Like, why leave?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I was, but why not take the opportunity? Like as a woman in med device, as a woman who was always like the only one in the room, I saw that there was a gap in resources for people to perform well, not just for women, for everyone to perform well. And so I really made it my mission in starting my business to build those resources. Sure. And it's been fun. I mean, I started, to answer your question real directly, I started with those folks like transitioning into leadership. Okay. And then built the program. So my Successful Sales Rep program and Path to President's Club, because I saw that group of reps as well was just such a gap, right? Your company prepares you from a clinical training standpoint. They might give you a few steps to follow from a sales cycle standpoint. Right. But then they push you out the door, right? And it's up to you.
It's up to you to figure it out.
Yeah, to figure it out. And hopefully you have a great manager and hopefully you've got great customers and great resources. But in the absence of perfection, it's really the systems and the strategies that you implement that are going to make the difference.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. And I want to let you know our programs cover the entire career of a medical sales professional. From getting into the medical sales industry, to training on how to be a top performer in the medical sales industry, to masterfully navigating your career to executive level leadership. These programs are personalized and customized for your specific career and background, and trained by over 50 experts, including surgeons. Our results speak for ourselves, and we're landing positions for our candidates in less than 120 days in top medical technology companies like Stryker, Medtronic, Merck, Abbott, you name it. Would you run an Ironman race without training and a strategy? You wouldn't. So why are you trying to do the same with a medical sales position? You need training, you need a strategy, and you need to visit evolveyoursuccess.com, fill out the application, schedule some time with one of our account executives, and let's get you into the position that you've always dreamed of.
And even the experience of not being sure if you can take it to your manager because you don't want to look bad or you feel some kind of way.
100%.
Where do you go to get that kind of help?
Yeah.
If you could sum it up into 3 points, what would you say are the common missteps you see with sales reps?
I mean, the first and foremost is having a clear sales process, right? They say process and systems. And so you could call those as 2 things or one thing.
Sure.
And the way I describe it, because I think process and systems gets lumped into one, but they're 2 distinct things, especially when they come to selling. And the first process is the recipe. Like if you're in the kitchen, you follow a recipe, right? You know what you're going to do to make your chicken for dinner. And that's kind of the steps that you would take to sell your product. The system is how are you actually doing it? So when you're in the kitchen, where are all the tools? What system do you have to make that, instead of a 45-minute cooking exercise, a 15-minute cooking exercise with a consistent outcome each time, right? And so you have to know both the steps that you're going to take and take them very consistently, get very, very good at them, and the systems to support you doing that work. So what are your resources? That's, I will say, first off, not having a sales process. I see that all the time. And while some folks,
what are the signals that, okay, this person clearly does not have a sales process?
First off, I'll just ask, like, who, it's the first question I ask when I teach the day on sales in my workshop. I'm like, who here has a sales process that they follow? And it's probably about 50%. Okay. I can also sieve it out because you'll get folks that say, oh, I have a sales process. I'm like, tell me about it. Because it should be a series of steps that you take yourself and your customer through, right? And when you take it through those steps, they become consistent, they become repeatable, and you get better at them. And just like you coach folks on interviewing, right? When they're answering the question over and over again, when they're refining, that's the power. That's the true power of when you see an exceptional salesperson, they have refined their message, their approach, and the way they do things so precisely because they do the same things over and over again, but better each time.
Okay.
Right. So that the lack of process you can sniff out pretty quickly if someone, when you say, tell me how you sell, it's like, oh, I look to just understand the customer. Okay, then what? And it's just like you can see that pretty easily. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So certainly just the sales process piece of it is gap number 1, right? And building the process and the systems. The other piece that I see is really not prioritizing what the full customer experience is. Because you have to so much right now. There's so much noise. There's so many medical devices, diagnostic products, tools these physicians can use, depending on what arena you're selling in, drugs that you can prescribe, that if you get a yes, right, that one yes is like the biggest, like that's the true gold in sales. And what I see folks doing is like you get the yes and then you move on to the next and you want the
instead
yes.
of following through.
You have to create this experience and this feedback loop, right? You think about, like, yesterday, I went to McDonald's for Diet Coke. And you might be wondering why I'm talking about this. I promise there's a purpose here. But so I went to McDonald's for Diet Coke. And I sat in the drive-thru. And I had gone a week before, and they were out of Diet Coke, which, like, McDonald's being out of Diet Coke is like, does the ocean have water? Like, it doesn't quite make sense.
Right.
But in that moment, I thought to myself, gosh, I shouldn't even be here because I don't know that they're going to have it, right? They didn't have their shit together again the first time. Are they going to have it together this time? Well, thankfully, they did. But that's what's going through your customer's head if the experience that they have with you in step 1 of them saying, I'll use your product or I'll place an order or I'll use this device, isn't this smooth, cohesive experience, they're not going to come back. Or they're going to come back and do what I did, sit in the drive-thru and think, should I really be here? And then when the competition comes in and you haven't done your follow-up or you haven't created that clear, cohesive experience for them, they're going to be a lot more willing to say, you know what, I gave that order to Samuel, but Kat's here. And so let's flip that and we're going to use this device or this drill this time.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's your process, it's your experience. And then the last piece, and this one, sometimes it comes across to folks as like, well, that's a no brainer, but it's the ownership that you take. Right. And what I mean by that is so often I see it in, oh, I've already followed up a few times. I don't want to push, or, oh, I did this for the customer, or we did this to do some market development, but they already know. So I'm not going to bother them with it. But owning your impact is so important. If you think it ties into the customer experience, if you think you're going to be able to do something differently to change that customer's thought patterns, beliefs, perspective, and you aren't clearly and consistently owning what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it matters to them.
So talk to me a little bit more about that. Give me a little bit more about what it looks like to own it.
Yeah. It depends. And so I'll just share an example
Sure.
that would be kind of an average, like you're going to a physician who's doing a trial on a new software, right? A new robotic software. And so when you do that trial, you're going to have a trial end date. Now, if you think to yourself, well, I've already talked to purchasing, they know when the end date is. The physician knows when the end date is. And so you let that software be pulled on the trial end date without communicating again to that physician, right? To say, hey, I know you already know this, but as a reminder, we are 3 days out from our end date for this trial.
Gotcha.
I have had a conversation. Your support is really important. If this is something that you want, here's the things that you can do. Step 1, step 2, to help drive this forward. It will be pulled on the 3rd. And then from there, I'll continue to keep you updated as we go through the contracting and the purchasing process with your team.
So almost like due diligence.
Yeah, that's a great, alternative to call it. Yeah, it's due diligence, but really owning the totality, because oftentimes I hear from reps like, oh, I don't want to come across as salesy, right? That's a big one.
Yeah.
Or I've already followed up. I don't want to be too pushy. But the reality is for us, we're our own main characters. Our product, our tools, whatever we're selling, that's our main character. It is not for your customer. They have a million things that they're thinking about when they're treating their patients.
Right.
If you're selling into purchasing or into the C-suite, they've got a ton of other administrative things that they're working through. So your follow-up, when done appropriately, is actually just sales in service of their end goal, right? And that's really when you keep that in mind, and when you own that you're the one moving it forward, you've got to own that you're pushing the football down the field time and time again with each play. And when you do that with the energy of like both enthusiasm and this center around like service to it, of I'm doing this not to be pitchy, right? But to be supportive of the thing that they said they wanted.
So taking these top 3, when you're working with anyone, so that brings me to our next question then. We also have Med Sales Bootcamp. We work with reps to get them to President's Club, and we see some challenges, but I'm very curious to what you see. What would you say is your number one challenge when working with someone where you're just thinking, I see this over and over and over again, and if this person doesn't realize this, it's going to be tough. What's the number one challenge you continue to see?
The first is really mindset, right? Like people's belief in their capacity to do something and the capacity for it to work. Because typically what I see is if you are in medical device, you're thinking to yourself, I've gotten myself this far. So what I've done should work to get me where I want to go next. And that is not the case. Like where you are now and what's gotten you here will not get you to that next level. You have to evolve, right? Evolve. And so the mindset piece is key, right? And really but taking it back to be like, okay, well, if you're saying you don't feel like you can go follow up with him, where is that coming from? Why? Like, did they give you bidding cues? Or are you putting that on yourself, right? It's like these self-imposed limitations. That's really what I mean when I talk about mindset. And then the other challenge I see is just their inability to be consistent.
Inability.
Right.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is like, you have to get in front of customers and do the reps. You have to go and try the things. And so often I hear, well, I tried that and it didn't work. I've done that before and I don't want to try it again. But they're not willing to explore why it didn't work in the first time and what you can refine to go do it differently to get a different result.
You nailed it. To answer the question back, limiting beliefs and work ethic. That's the two biggest challenges we see are limiting beliefs and work ethic. Which brings me to my next question. When it comes to work ethic, especially you, Kat, because you've been in the field, you've been a manager, can you coach work ethic?
Nature and nurture, right? That's the age-old question. To a certain extent, yes, because it depends on where the breakdown in work ethic is.
Talk to us about that.
It just really depends on management, coaching, sales. It's all psychology. And so you have to understand the motivators on the other end. And if that work ethic comes from maybe you didn't have the right support, the right belief from leadership, the right structure around you or systems, right? Then yes. Because sometimes what I'll see in folks is like you start to get a few like bad quarters, or maybe not even bad quarters, bad months, bad moments under your belt.
Sure.
And then it shifts your work ethic, right? Because you're like, I don't want to go do that again because this doesn't feel good. So that is a coachable work ethic piece. Now, if you aren't hungry at the get-go to break into med device, if you're not willing to run through brick walls, if that's not the energy that you have, that I can't coach. You got to know that you're going to take a lot of hits on the chin in this space. And then eventually you rise to the top and then it's blue ocean and cloud-free skies, but you got to get through a lot of turbulence first.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, taking it to the managers. And I think this is a good segue. So how does a manager catch the potential hire that might not have this work ethic? You know, I'd like to believe that in this day and age with ChatGPT and all these different AI platforms and just how saturated it is with people trying to get into the medical sales industry, it's getting harder and harder. Well, you tell me, but I believe it'll be getting harder and harder for managers to decipher, is this person who they say they are? What are the telltale signs for managers to try to really see if the person you're about to bring onto your team?
I always say where there's smoke, there's fire. And oftentimes what happens is as a sales leader, you are selling yourself on a candidate, right? You've gotten emotionally attached to someone in the candidate pool. And that is the thing I tell managers, watch out for, because when you get attached to someone, you lose your objective judgment, right, of the situation. Right. And then you start to let things go. But typically, I always, as a hiring manager, it's how I approached it. And then how I coach managers on hiring is that you should be selling yourself out of each candidate. Nope, these are the reasons why this isn't going to work. These are, here, as you look at and bucket the candidates, you have to have objective criteria that you're evaluating them on and evaluating consistently across the board. So you can identify those red flags. And then B, to your point of like, how do you identify if someone doesn't have the work ethic? I hate to say it because to your point, in the age of like AI, anyone can draft a 30, 60, 90
right.
that's relevant. Anyone can have a good resume, right? Because a resume, unless you do a reference check, is just like someone's interpretation of their own personal success, which is always...
Truthfully, that is all it really is, but yes.
Right? Yeah. And so that piece, you have to look at the little things. Just a quick story. So when I was a manager, I had a potential rep, a candidate that was an interview scheduled by our recruiter at the time. And she was a few minutes late and really discombobulated. And to me, that's a no-fly zone, right? Like how you do one thing is how you do anything. And I'm always looking, how are you going to be with my customers? Well, I was like, listen, that's a no for me. And the recruiter said, I just feel like she has the background. She's got the insight. She's hungry, ... I said, you know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
But she's not for me.
Yeah.
So he passed her on to one of my peers who called me and said, why don't you hire her? And I was transparent with him. And I said, I would recommend that, you not entertain her as a candidate. And they hired her. And
it all came to
she did not last very long.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've had it myself before where I've like little things like the crumpled resume, where I'm like, I don't know. There's so many other things, or they have these references, or this physician is vouched for them. Just, you have to be highly aware of the patterns that work in your business. As a leader, what works for your type of cell that you have, because every med device cell has a little bit of nuance, and you need to be meticulous about finding those things in the candidates. And if they're off, then you need to be honest with
Listen
yourself
to
as
the
a candidate.
intuition. Listen to
Yes, that's what you get paid for. That's what you get paid for, right? Not to just like be nice to people. It's not that you're being, because honestly, I will say this, Samuel, the nicest thing you can do is redirect a candidate to another opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because hiring that person that individual did, hiring that person, that didn't do her any service. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't help her land where she needs to land to be successful.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a customized and personalized program that gets you into the medical technology industry as a sales professional, or any type of role for that matter. Become a top performer in your position and masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolvesuccess.com by visiting our site, filling out an application, schedule some time with one of our account executives, and allowing us to get you where you need to be. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews on the Medical Sales Podcast.